Alright, today I'm going to read a Winnie the Pooh story for you. This one is in which Eel loses a tail and Pooh finds one. The old grey donkey, Eel, stood by himself in a thistly corner of the forest, his front feet well apart, his head on one side, and thought about things. Sometimes he thought sadly to himself, why? And sometimes he thought, wherefore? And sometimes he thought, inasmuch as which, and sometimes he didn't quite know what he was thinking about. So when Winnie the Pooh came stumping along, Eel was very glad to be able to stop thinking for a little while in order to say, how do you do, in a gloomy manner to him. And how are you? Said Winnie the Pooh. Eel shook his head from side to side. Not very how, he said. I don't seem to have felt at all how for a very long time. Dear, dear, said Pooh. I'm sorry about that. Let's have a look at you. So, Eel stood there, gazing sadly at the ground, and Winnie the Pooh walked all around him once. So Eel stood there. Why, what's happened to your tail? He said in surprise. What has happened to my tail? Said Eel. It isn't there. Are you sure? Well, either the tail is there or it isn't there. You can't make a mistake about it, and yours isn't there. Then what is? Nothing. Let's have a look, said Eel, and he turned slowly around to the place where his tail had been a little while ago, and then, finding that he couldn't catch it up, he turned round the other way, like this. And so he came back to where he was at first, and then he put his head down and looked between his front legs. At last he said with a long sigh, I believe you're right. Of course I'm right, said Pooh. That accounts for a good deal, said Eel gloomily. It explains everything. No wonder. You must have left it somewhere, said Winnie the Pooh. Somebody must have taken it, said Eel. How like them, he added, after a long silence. Pooh felt that he ought to say something helpful about it, but didn't quite know what, so he decided to do something helpful instead. Eel, he said solemnly, I, Winnie the Pooh, will find your tail for you. Thank you, Pooh, answered Eel. You're a real friend, said he. Not like some, he said. So Winnie the Pooh went off to find Eel's tail. It was a fine spring morning in the forest as he started out. Little soft clouds played happily in the blue sky, skipping from time to time in front of the sun, as if they had come to put it out, and sliding away suddenly so that the next might have his turn. Through them and between them the sun shone bravely, and a copse which had worn its furs all the year round seemed old and dowdy now beside the new green lace which the beeches had put on so prettily. Through copse and spinney marched the bear, down old slopes of gorse and heather, over rocky beds of streams, up steep banks of sandstone, and to the heather again, and so at last, tired and hungry, to the 100-acre wood. For it was in 100-acre wood that the owl lived. And if anyone knows anything about anything, said the bear to himself, the owl who knows something about something. Well, my name's not Winnie the Pooh. Which it is, he said. So there you are. Owl lived at the Chestnuts, an old-world residence of great charm, which was grander than anybody else's, or seemed so to the bear, because it had both a knocker and a bell pull. Underneath the knocker there was a notice which said, Please ring if a rinser is required. It sounds kind of Scottish, but it's just spelled funny. Underneath the bell pull there was a notice which said, Please schnock if a rinser is not required. It's not me not being able to read it, just says it like that. Yeah. These notices had been written by Christopher Robin, who was the only one in the forest who could spell. For owl-wise, though, he was not in many ways able to read and write and spell his own name. Yet somehow, when all the pieces of delicate words like measles and butterstones. Sorry for the interruption. Winnie the Pooh read the two notices very carefully, first from left to right, and afterwards, in case he had missed some of it, from right to left. Then, to make quite sure, he knocked and pulled the knocker, and he pulled and knocked the bell rope, and he called out in a very loud voice, Owl? I require an answer. It's Bear speaking. and the door opened and Owl looked out. "Hello, Pooh," he said. "How's things?" "Terrible and sad," said Pooh, "because Eeyore, who is a friend of mine, has lost his tail. And he's moping about it, so could you very kindly tell me how to find it for him?" "Well," said Owl, "the customary procedure in such cases is as follows." "What does customary proceed cake mean?" said Pooh, "for I'm a bear of a very little brain, and long words bother me." "It means things to do." "As long as it means that, I don't mind," said Pooh humbly. "The thing to do is as follows. First, issue a reward. Then—" "Just a moment," said Pooh, holding up his paw. "What did we do to this? What you were saying? You sneezed, just as you were going to tell me." "I didn't sneeze." "Yes, you did, Owl." "Excuse me, Pooh, I didn't. You can't sneeze without knowing it." "Well, you can't know it without something having been sneezed." "What I said was first issue a reward." "You're doing it again," said Pooh, sadly. "A reward," said Owl very loudly. "We need to write a notice to say that we give a large something to anybody who finds Eeyore's tail." "Oh, I see," said Pooh, nodding his head. "Talking about large somethings," he went on dreamily, "I generally have a small something about now, about this time, this morning." And he looked wistfully at the cupboard in the corner of Owl's parlour. "Just a mouthful of condensed milk or whatnot, or perhaps just a lick of honey." "Well then," said Owl, "we write up this notice and we'll put it up all over the forest." "A lick of honey," murmured Bear to himself. Or, not as the case may be." He gave a deep sigh, and tried very hard to listen to what Owl was saying. But Owl went on and on, using longer and longer words, until at last he came back to where he started, and he explained that the person to write out this notice was, in fact, Christopher Robin. "It was he who wrote the ones on my front door for me. Did you see them, Pooh?" For some time now, Pooh had been saying yes and no, and in turn, with his eyes shut, to all that Owl was saying. And having said yes, yes, last time, and saying no, not at all, now without really knowing what Owl was talking about. "Did you see them?" said Owl, a little surprised. "Come on, look at them now." So they went outside, and Pooh looked at the knocker and the notice below it, and he looked at the bell rope and the notice below that. And the more he looked at the bell rope, and the more he felt he had seen something like it somewhere else, somewhere before. "Handsome bell rope, isn't it?" said Owl. Pooh nodded. "It reminds me of something," he said, "but I can't think what. Where did you get it?" I just came across it in the forest. It was hanging over a bush, and I thought at first somebody lived there, so I rang it, and nothing happened. And then I rang it again very loudly, and it came off in my hand, and it was as if nobody seemed to want it. I took it home, and—" "Owl," Pooh said solemnly, "you made a mistake. Somebody did want it." "Who?" "Eeyore, my dear friend Eeyore. He was fond of it." "Fond of it? Well, more like attached to it," said Winnie the Pooh sadly. So with these words, he unhooked it and carried it back to where Eeyore and to where Christopher Robin. So Christopher Robin nailed it on in the right place. Eeyore frisked about the forest, waving his tail happily. Winnie the Pooh came over all funny and had to hurry home for a little snack or something to sustain himself. Then, wiping his mouth half an hour later, he sang to himself proudly, "Who found the tail?" "I," said Pooh. And at 2:45, it was only 11:15 really, "I found the tail." Not much of a song, but yeah, great anyway. Looking forward to seeing you guys soon. Hope Kaiden enjoyed that. Probably won't understand it yet, but yeah, see you next week.